Remember when Halloween wasn't just about chocolate bars and gummies? How we used to grab Sugar Daddies, candy cigarettes, skeletons, and every sticky weird treat we could find. Yup, today we're digging up all those candies that disappeared from our trick-or-treat bags forever. And trust me, you gotta stick around for number 7. It's a 70s classic so iconic, you'll be transported right back to your childhood. Mr. Bones, skeleton-shaped candy that you could snap apart and rebuild like a tiny jigsaw puzzle. And it even came with its own coffin. Halloween didn't feel complete without dumping your haul on the floor and reconstructing your candy skeletons. It was clever, quirky, and gone before most of us even realized it. And speaking of candy with a little shock factor, candy cigarettes. Chalky, sugary sticks that looked way too much like the real thing. You remember sneaking a puff for the thrill, laughing with friends, and knowing adults were silently judging your taste in candy. They vanished because, well, smoking isn't exactly for kids. But nothing tastes quite like the memory of that first forbidden bite. Wax lips and wax fangs. Impossible to eat gracefully. Utterly ridiculous, but hilarious. You'd snap them on, make your friends squeal, and sometimes forget you were even supposed to be trick-or-treating. And if you thought that was outrageous, our next candy brings a little Halloween creepiness to your chocolate stash. Necco Wafers. Those pastel-colored chalky discs that somehow lasted from the Civil War to our trick-or-treat bags. You either loved them or wondered if you were eating sidewalk dust, but there was something about that crinkly wax paper roll that screamed old-school Halloween. And speaking of candies that made you feel like you time traveled, Sugar Daddy, a caramel on a stick that demanded patience, and yet it was worth every chewy bite. You remember working on it while walking the streets, trading bites with friends, or just savoring it slowly after the night was done. And while Sugar Daddy dominated the big-size caramel game, there was a bite-sized sibling that made sharing a little easier. Sugar Babies, tiny, chewy caramels that could disappear by the handful if you weren't careful. They weren't flashy, but they were the perfect little treats you remember sneaking into your pocket for later. But stick around because we're coming up to the candy classic we teased about earlier, Mary Jane. Chewy, peanut buttery taffy wrapped in wax paper, the kind of treat your neighbor's jar always seemed to magically produce. One bite, and suddenly you're back on those crisp Halloween nights, comparing candy hauls with friends, trading a Sugar Daddy for a handful of these, and savoring that homespun flavor nobody makes anymore. It was sticky, nutty, unmistakably Mary Jane, and that's why, even decades later, it earns a spot in our candy graveyard. If you love Mary Jane's, the next candy takes nostalgia up another notch. Bit-O-Honey, honey-flavored taffy with little almond bits, individually wrapped so every piece felt like a tiny reward. Sweet, chewy, and utterly unforgettable. The kind of candy that made you stop mid-trick-or-treat to savor it. And speaking of peanut butter experiments that are gone too soon, Zagnut. Peanut butter with toasted coconut, a flavor combination that screamed vintage Halloween. You either loved it instantly or had no idea what to make of it. But it was impossible to forget. And finally, the candy that dominated every retro Halloween bag. Tootsie Rolls and Tootsie Frooties. Small, chewy, chocolatey bites that were everywhere during Halloween, the ones you'd ration because they always disappeared too fast. The last surviving champions of old-school Halloween candy nostalgia. And that's our trip down the candy lane of Halloween past. Which one do you remember grabbing first? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more sweet nostalgia.